Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. Sudan conflict escalates with hospital attacks. US-Ukraine relations strained by shifting positions. Thailand responds to Cambodian support and rising tensions. Benin coup attempt increases regional instability. China's radar activity heightens East Asian conflict. Syria remains uncertain after Assad's fall. Royal Navy adjusts strategy to Russian submarine activity. US-Venezuela tensions rise following Díaz's death. China's trade surplus exceeds $1 trillion. Malaysia Airlines faces compensation claims for MH370. Thailand announces economic stimulus and tax changes. Praram 9 model considered in Thailand. Legal disputes and political fallout plague US politics. 100 children released from Niger kidnapping. Afrikaner farmers seek refugee status due to violence. Sudan conflict and apprenticeship decline amidst hospital attack and oil field control. The ongoing conflict in Sudan, erupting in April 2023 between the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, and the army, continues to escalate with a devastating attack on a hospital and kindergarten in Kaloji, South Kordofan, resulting in at least 114 deaths, including 63 children. Drone attacks targeted the facilities as rescuers attempted to evacuate injured children, according to reports. The World Health Organization, WHO, condemned the attack, calling for an end to the violence and increased humanitarian access. Survivors were transferred to Abu Jabaiha Hospital for treatment, with urgent appeals for blood donations and medical support. The WHO's attacks on health care monitoring system recorded 114 deaths and 35 injuries. Simultaneously, a significant decline in apprenticeship starts in England is being addressed. Skills Minister Baroness Smith stated a plan to offer 50,000 new apprenticeship places following a 40% drop over the past decade, as reported by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, CIPD, which documented a 41% fall in apprenticeship starts for under-19s. The shift towards fewer, longer apprenticeships, initiated in 2017, has resulted in a 29% decrease since 2015, with approximately 354,000 starts in 24-25. Adding to the conflict's strategic implications, the RSF claimed control of Heglig, Sudan's largest oil field, near the southern border. Government troops withdrew to protect the facility, preventing damage. Heglig houses the main processing facility for South Sudanese oil, crucial for both South Sudan's revenue and Sudan's hard currency earnings. The capture of Heglig is considered a pivotal moment by the RSF. The battle for the Kordofans, a region of almost 8 million people, is intensifying as the army advances towards Darfur, currently under RSF control. The situation remains dire, with calls for a ceasefire and increased humanitarian aid. Zelensky and Western leaders grapple with shifting U.S. position amidst Ukraine peace talks. Recent developments surrounding Ukraine's peace negotiations are characterized by a complex interplay of European support, shifting U.S. involvement, and persistent challenges regarding territorial concessions and security guarantees. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is engaged in high-level talks with European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, primarily in London, seeking to solidify international backing for the country's defense. These discussions center on securing ongoing peace negotiations and determining next steps, with a key focus on obtaining meaningful security guarantees following a potential agreement. However, the US's role is proving to be a significant complicating factor. Donald Trump has expressed disappointment with Zelensky's apparent lack of engagement with the US-backed peace proposal, stating he believes Zelensky hasn't read the draft. Trump's concerns highlight a divergence in approach, particularly regarding territorial concessions, specifically the potential for Ukraine to cede control of eastern regions in exchange for Russian withdrawals. The U.S. proposal, involving a split of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant's energy output, is also a contentious point. On the ground, Russia continues to make incremental advances in eastern Ukraine, particularly around Pokrovsk, where fighting is intense, and is conducting airstrikes against Ukrainian supply lines. Despite these gains, Russia has yet to capture Kupiansk. Russian forces are also intensifying strikes against bridges in the Zaporizhzhia region, aiming to disrupt Ukrainian logistics. Furthermore, Donald Trump Jr. has suggested the U.S. may walk away from the peace talks, adding another layer of uncertainty. The situation is further complicated by the ongoing debate over security guarantees, with European nations seeking assurances that would deter future Russian aggression. The negotiations remain fraught with difficulty, underscored by the continued need to address the complex issues surrounding Zaporizhzhia and the potential for territorial concessions, while navigating the evolving stance of key international players. Thailand's military intensifies response, targets Cambodian support systems. Recent escalating tensions between Thailand and Cambodia have resulted in a significant intensification of military action, with Thailand launching targeted strikes against Cambodian infrastructure and support systems. The conflict, rooted in a century-old border dispute and exacerbated by recent clashes, has seen a dramatic increase in casualties and displacement. Following earlier airstrikes targeting a casino used as a Cambodian drone control center near Chiang Mai in Ubon Ratchathani, Thailand's military is now focusing on destroying Cambodian rocket bases. Army spokesman Maj Gen. Winthai Suvari stated that the casino's use as a drone control center demonstrated a clear intention to harm Thailand, necessitating a defensive response. The military's objective is to neutralize Cambodia's supporting fire systems, which have previously caused casualties on Thai soil. The escalating situation follows a July ceasefire agreement brokered by US President Donald Trump and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. However, this agreement quickly deteriorated due to a landmine explosion, prompting Thailand to halt progress. Recent attacks have further strained the fragile peace. The Cambodian Defense Ministry condemned Thailand's actions, asserting that the strikes were a response to provocative Thai actions. Reports indicate that Cambodian rocket fire had previously caused significant casualties on Thai soil during the July clashes. Thousands of civilians have been displaced, with approximately 70% evacuated from affected border towns. Thailand's military has been actively evacuating civilians, while Cambodian villagers are fleeing their homes. The situation remains volatile, with both sides accusing the other of initiating hostilities and posing a threat to regional stability. The ongoing conflict underscores the complexities of the border dispute and the challenges of maintaining peace in the region. The focus of the Thai military is to dismantle Cambodia's capabilities to inflict damage on Thai communities. The situation continues to evolve as both nations grapple with the consequences of renewed violence. Benin coup attempt foiled, regional tensions rise. An attempted coup in Benin was successfully thwarted by loyalist forces on Sunday, following an early morning broadcast by a group of soldiers announcing their takeover. President Patrice Talon, a businessman known as the King of Cotton, confirmed the situation was totally under control after security forces swiftly regained control, arresting 14 individuals linked to the mutiny, including 12 who stormed the state broadcaster's offices. The coup was instigated by Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigre and his followers, who criticized Talon's handling of the deteriorating security situation in northern Benin, where the army has suffered losses against jihadist groups linked to Islamic State and Al-Qaeda, as well as cuts in healthcare, tax increases, and restrictions on political activities. Regional powers swiftly responded, with Nigeria deploying fighter jets to assist Benin in dislodging the coup plotters from a military camp and a television station. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has deployed troops from Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast to secure key installations and prevent further instability. ECOWAS, alongside the African Union's AU, has condemned the coup attempt and reaffirmed a zero-tolerance stance towards unconstitutional changes of government. The attempted coup highlights growing instability in West Africa, following recent coups in Guinea-Bissau, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Mali, and Niger, with Russia strengthening ties with these Sahel countries. Benin, a former French colony and a major cotton producer, has faced criticism regarding its government's handling of dissent and security concerns. President Talon is due to step down next year, endorsing Finance Minister Romuald Wadagni as his successor. The events underscore broader concerns about democratic backsliding and the potential for further unrest across the region. The swift response from Nigeria and ECOWAS signals a determination to uphold democratic principles and maintain stability in Benin, while the underlying issues of security, governance, and socio-economic challenges remain significant. Rising tensions. China's radar lock on Japanese aircraft escalates East Asian conflict. Recent events have dramatically heightened tensions between Japan and China, following a series of concerning incidents involving Chinese fighter jets and Japanese aircraft. Japan formally protested after Chinese J-15 fighter jets engaged in radar-locking operations directed at Japanese aircraft, specifically occurring on Saturday off the southern Okinawa Islands. This action is considered a significant escalation due to the inherent threat it represents, signaling a potential attack. In response to the Chinese maneuver, Japan scrambled its own fighter jets to maintain a defensive posture. Beijing has vehemently denied any aggressive intent, accusing Tokyo of harassing its forces during a routine training exercise. This exchange of accusations reflects the increasingly hostile rhetoric characterizing the relationship between the two nations. The underlying cause of this heightened tension lies in the long-standing dispute over Taiwan, which China views as a province and has not ruled out forcibly reuniting with. while Japan maintains its support for Taiwan's self-governance. The escalating situation has further exacerbated already strained diplomatic ties. Recent disagreements between Japan and China's coast guards regarding a confrontation near disputed islands in the East China Sea underscore the volatile nature of the region. The incident involving radar locking adds another layer of complexity to the already precarious situation. The potential for miscalculation and unintended escalation remains a significant concern, impacting daily life for citizens in both countries and demanding careful diplomatic management to prevent further deterioration of relations. The core issue remains the contested status of Taiwan, fueling mutual distrust and contributing to a dangerous environment in the East Asian geopolitical landscape. Syria's uncertain future a year after Assad's fall, a year following Bashar al-Assad's seizure of power. Syria remains a nation grappling with significant instability and unresolved challenges. Despite some notable achievements, the country's future remains precarious, marked by sectarian tensions, external interference, and a lack of comprehensive governance. The interim government, led by President Chirac, has secured key international support, primarily from Donald Trump, who has expressed satisfaction with Syria's stabilization efforts. This backing has facilitated the easing of sanctions and spurred economic activity, including modernization projects in the oil and gas sectors and privatization of airports. However, these developments have not translated into widespread improvements for the majority of Syrians. A major obstacle persists in the form of ongoing tensions between Syria and Israel. Despite attempts at mediation, a U.S.-brokered security agreement remains elusive, with Israel maintaining a significant military presence in the south and demanding demilitarization, a demand Syria refuses. The recent raid on Beit Jim, resulting in civilian casualties, further complicates the situation, hindering any progress toward dialogue. Sectarian divisions continue to fuel unrest. The government's attempts to assert authority, particularly in Alawite areas, have triggered violence and displacement. The lack of a robust rebuilding fund and accountable governance structure exacerbates the crisis. Many Syrians, like Mohammed, express profound anxieties about their children's future, highlighting the pervasive sense of insecurity and lack of basic services. The ongoing conflict with Israel represents a fundamental threat to Syria's sovereignty and stability. The complexities of the situation underscore the immense challenges facing the interim government and the long road ahead to achieving lasting peace and security for the nation. The future remains uncertain, dependent on resolving the Israeli-Syrian conflict and addressing the deep-seated sectarian divisions within the country. Royal Navy's Atlantic Strategy, a response to Russian submarine activity. The Royal Navy is implementing a new Atlantic strategy, dubbed Atlantic Bastion, primarily in response to a significant increase in Russian submarine and underwater activity, particularly concerning the mapping of British undersea cables and pipelines. This strategy utilizes a network of drones, warships, and surveillance aircraft to protect vital infrastructure. The program is a direct result of a 30% rise in Russian vessel threats within UK waters over the past 2 years. Concerns have been raised regarding the UK's preparedness, with the National Security Strategy Committee expressing not confidence in the nation's ability to safeguard its undersea assets. Central to the strategy is the deployment of autonomous underwater gliders, like the Fathom, to monitor and detect adversaries operating covertly in British waters. These gliders, developed by Helsing, gather data autonomously for months, processing threats faster than traditional methods. The government's investment in this technology, alongside the launch of unmanned submersibles like Excalibur, reflects a commitment to staying ahead of the perceived Russian threat. A key element of the strategy involves collaboration with Norway through the Luna House Agreement, aimed at jointly hunting Russian submarines and protecting underwater infrastructure. However, critics, including Royal United Services Institute, RUSI expert Peter Roberts, argue the Royal Navy lacks sufficient resources, and that the strategy feels like a lipstick on a pig, relying heavily on drones rather than bolstering the Navy's core capabilities. Roberts highlights a 20-year neglect of the UK's post-World War II role as a guardian of the Atlantic. The escalating tensions are underscored by incidents such as the Yantar's alleged laser targeting of RAF pilots and the ongoing monitoring of British waters. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, views the Luna House Agreement as a justification for monitoring Russian naval activity and a potential trigger for conflict. Despite these challenges, the First Sea Lord, Sir Gwyn Jenkins, emphasizes the need for a rapid response and ongoing investment to maintain a competitive advantage in the Atlantic, acknowledging the significant resources Russia is dedicating to its submarine fleet. The strategy represents a concerted effort to address a rapidly evolving threat, and safeguard critical maritime assets. The death of Alfredo Díaz intensifies US-Venezuela tensions. The death of Alfredo Díaz, a Venezuelan opposition figure detained for over a year in El Helicoide prison, has escalated tensions between the United States and Venezuela. Díaz, formerly the governor of Nueva Esparta, died in custody, prompting strong condemnation from the U.S. government and human rights organizations. The U.S. State Department described his detention as arbitrary and a product of a torture center, highlighting concerns about systemic abuses under President Nicolás Maduro's regime. The incident follows a pattern of deaths among political prisoners in Venezuela since 2014, with human rights groups like Foro Penal documenting at least 17 fatalities. Díaz's incarceration stemmed from accusations of incitement to hatred and terrorism related to his questioning of the disputed 2024 presidential election results, which saw Maduro declared the winner despite widespread international criticism of their lack of fairness. Donald Trump's administration has consistently accused Maduro of overseeing a campaign of repression against the opposition and has intensified military involvement in the region. U.S. airstrikes targeting drug smuggling vessels in the Caribbean and Pacific have resulted in over 80 deaths, further fueling the conflict. Trump has labeled Maduro as the head of drug cartels and designated 2 Venezuelan cartels as terrorist organizations. In response, Venezuela has increased its military presence, with over 600 soldiers swearing in on Saturday, citing U.S. threats. The Venezuelan government also announced resumed Turkish Airlines flights between the two nations, previously suspended due to U.S. concerns. Maria Corina Machado, a prominent opposition leader who won the Nobel Peace Prize, expressed deep concern over Díaz's death, viewing it as part of a broader pattern of repression. The Democratic Unitary Platform and Díaz's own party, Democratic Action, also mourned his unjust detention and violation of fundamental rights. The U.S. has deployed a large naval force and thousands of troops in the region, representing the largest such deployment in decades. These actions are primarily aimed at disrupting drug trafficking and migration flows. The situation remains highly volatile, with both the U.S. and Venezuela escalating their involvement, raising fears of further conflict and instability in Latin America. China's trade surplus surpasses $1 trillion amidst shifting trade dynamics. China's trade surplus soared to a record $1.08 trillion for the first 11 months of 2024, exceeding the $992 billion surplus of 2024, driven by robust exports and a decline in imports. November exports rose by 5.9% to $33 billion, marking a significant recovery from October's 1.1% contraction. However, shipments to the United States plummeted nearly 29% for an 8th consecutive month. Despite this decline in U.S. demand, China's trade performance has been bolstered by surging exports to alternative markets, including Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the European Union. Imports increased by 1.9% to $218.6 billion in November, demonstrating a slight improvement from the previous month, although the property sector's downturn continues to impact consumer spending. A year-long trade truce between China and the U.S. brokered in South Korea has played a crucial role, with the U.S. reducing tariffs and China halting export controls on rare earths. Economists believe that the full impact of the tariff cuts on U.S. exports will be felt in subsequent months. China's factory activity remains in contraction for an 8th consecutive month, casting doubt on a sustained rebound in external demand following the trade truce. Despite this, economists generally anticipate that China will achieve its 5% economic growth target for the year, largely due to the continued strength of exports. The government's focus on advanced manufacturing and a 5-year plan, outlined in October, underscores the strategic shift. Looking ahead, analysts predict that China will maintain its export market share, with Morgan Stanley forecasting a rise to 6.5% by 2030, fueled by advancements in sectors like electric vehicles and robotics. However, persistent trade tensions and protectionist policies pose a challenge. Chilo of BNP Paribas Asset Management emphasizes the unstable nature of the global trade environment due to the ongoing stalemate in China-US relations. Despite these complexities, China's continued industrial prowess suggests a sustained, albeit cautious, trajectory for global export market share. Malaysia Airlines ordered to pay compensation in MH370 cases. A Beijing court has issued a significant ruling, ordering Malaysia Airlines to pay compensation to families of passengers aboard the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370. The decision, announced by state broadcaster CCTV on Monday, stems from 8 individual cases, resulting in a total payout of approximately 2.9 million yuan of 410 per family. These settlements cover the losses suffered by the relatives of 8 passengers who were on board the aircraft when it disappeared in 2014. The court's decision represents a critical step in resolving ongoing legal disputes surrounding the disappearance of MH370, which remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. The cases have been protracted, involving complex legal arguments and emotional appeals from families seeking answers and redress. The settlement amounts are intended to provide some measure of financial support to those directly impacted by the tragedy. Furthermore, the court has reported that a total of 47 cases have already been settled and formally withdrawn from legal proceedings. This indicates a willingness on the part of Malaysia Airlines to acknowledge responsibility and reach agreements with the families. However, 23 additional cases are still actively under trial, suggesting that the legal process is not yet fully concluded. Malaysia Airlines has not yet issued an official statement responding to the court's order. The ongoing legal battles highlight the immense challenges faced by the families in their pursuit of justice and closure. The case underscores the complexities of international aviation law and the difficulties in establishing accountability for catastrophic events like the disappearance of MH370, a plane that continues to evoke profound sadness and unanswered questions. The court's actions mark a notable, albeit partial, resolution in a long and arduous legal battle. Thailand's economic stimulus and tax implications of Thailand is implementing a series of economic stimulus measures aimed at boosting fourth-quarter GDP growth, targeting a gain exceeding 1%. The government's Con La Cruing Plus co-payment scheme, in its second phase, will be rolled out before the end of 2025 to address unregistered individuals, those without smartphones, and vulnerable groups affected by recent southern Thailand flooding. Approximately 20 million of the country's 60 million eligible individuals have already received benefits from the initial phase of the scheme. Funding for this second phase will primarily come from the central budget, totaling 124 billion baht, with 19 billion previously allocated to the first phase. However, the budget prioritizes aid for flood victims. To further stimulate spending, a Pudimi Kuan campaign offers tax incentives for domestic tourism. Individuals can deduct up to 20,000 baht in combined VAT expenses for accommodation and restaurant visits, with higher deductions up to 30,000 baht for secondary cities. Juristic persons receive similar benefits for domestic staff training, with deductions ranging from 1.5 to 2 times the expenses depending on the city. These measures are valid from October 29th to December 15th. Addressing household debt is another key component, with a program offering debt restructuring up to 100,000 baht, transferring debts to state-owned asset management companies. This program covers 3.4 million people in the first phase. Simultaneously, the government is providing liquidity support to small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, which account for 35% of the country's GDP. Despite global economic slowdown predictions, factors like rising consumer confidence and improving SME sentiment contribute to the anticipated growth. The Thailand-Cambodia border situation is considered stable, mitigating potential economic disruptions. Preliminary calculations by the Finance Ministry, excluding the government's stimulus measures, suggest a growth rate of around 0.8%. The government's initiatives, combined with these positive trends, are projected to drive economic growth during the final quarter of the year. MRTA's Japan model for Praram, the Mass Rapid Transit Authority of Thailand. MRTA is implementing Japan's transit-oriented development, a TODM model, for its inaugural commercial land development project slated to commence early next year in Bangkok's burgeoning Praram Rama Iox business district. This initiative follows a study visit led by MRTA's Deputy Governor, Padanafong Phongsupatsumit, to Japan's Urban Renaissance Agency, UR, responsible for major TOD schemes. A key component of the project is the Shinagawa project in Japan, a 30-hectare rail-linked urban development valued at 25 billion baht. Designed by architect Kengo Kuma, it incorporates mixed-use planning including residential units, office buildings, hotels, retail zones, supermarkets, and mobility hubs, all seamlessly connected by a high-speed Shinkansen rail system alongside urban rail, buses, and other transport modes. The development also incorporates advanced technologies such as autonomous security robots and AI-guided navigation. UR's focus encompasses urban regeneration, community housing, post-disaster rehabilitation, and international investment. The success of large-scale TOD in Thailand hinges on lifestyle adjustments, particularly shifting commuters towards public transport to achieve green and low-carbon goals. The MRTA plans to utilize Tamachi Depot as the development site, mirroring Japan's approach, and potentially redevelop the Blue Line Maintenance Depot in Hua Kwong into a mixed-use commercial district without relocating the core maintenance facility. The project's master plan, developed over a decade, aims to integrate commercial development with urban transit, generating revenue to subsidize public transport fares. The initial pilot development will concentrate on health-related services, anticipating strong growth in the sector. Strategically located along the Hua Kwong Rama IX corridor, It offers direct access to the blue and future orange lines, enhancing connectivity for healthcare facilities and commercial spaces. The proposal will be presented to the MRTA board this month and subsequently submitted to the cabinet for approval, with commencement expected early next year. This project represents a significant step towards integrating commercial development with Thailand's expanding mass transit network. Legal battles and political fallout dominate U.S. politics. Recent news cycles have been dominated by legal challenges, political infighting, and shifting allegiances within the United States political landscape. A central theme revolves around disputes concerning transparency, accountability, and the ongoing influence of former President Donald Trump. In one development, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, a staunch Trump ally, announced her resignation from Congress following a significant falling out with the former president. Greene expressed frustration over Trump's labeling of her a traitor and his intention to support a challenger in the primary election. She revealed a pattern of threats against her and her family, citing a surge in death threats following her public disagreements with Trump. Greene stated definitively that she has no plans to seek higher office, including a presidential run. Simultaneously, legal battles continue concerning the handling of classified documents and investigations into former President Trump's activities. Specifically, Representative Greene's signing of a discharge petition to release all Justice Department files related to accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein has fueled a heated dispute with Trump. Greene maintains that the files belong to Epstein's victims and that they deserve full transparency. Trump, however, expressed concern that releasing the information would hurt people. Furthermore, Representative Greene has been vocal about the actions of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, accusing him of operating without proper congressional oversight. She contends that Austin's recent actions, particularly regarding communication with foreign governments, represent a lawless approach to national security. This accusation has ignited a broader debate about the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. Meanwhile, calls for Secretary of Defense Austin's removal have gained momentum within certain segments of Congress. These calls are rooted in concerns about the department's adherence to established protocols and the perceived lack of transparency regarding its operations. The situation underscores a deep-seated tension between the executive and legislative branches of the U.S. government, characterized by accusations of overreach and a struggle for control. The events highlight the increasing polarization of American politics and the challenges facing the nation's democratic institutions. 100 children released following Niger state kidnapping. 100 children abducted from a Catholic school in Papiri, Niger State, Nigeria, have been released following a coordinated effort by Nigerian authorities. The release, confirmed by Police Chief Adamu Abdullahi Eleman and Bishop Bulus Dawa Yohana, comes after a month-long ordeal. While the exact details of the rescue remain unclear, including the methods employed and whether ransom payments were involved, the President's National Security Advisor played a crucial role. Bishop Yohana indicated that logistical considerations, such as processing the children and providing support, may delay the formal handover to their families. The incident is part of a disturbing trend of mass abductions targeting schools and places of worship across northern and central Nigeria. Prior to this release, over 250 students and 12 staff were initially taken from St. Mary's Catholic School. Related attacks have included the abduction of individuals in Kwara and Kebbi states, with all those taken in those incidents subsequently freed. Recent attacks have also targeted churches and communities in Kogi and Sokoto states, resulting in kidnappings of a pastor, his wife, and several worshippers, as well as a bride and her bridesmaids. The perpetrators of these attacks are believed to be criminal gangs motivated by ransom payments, though some analysts suspect the involvement of jihadist groups. Despite a ban on ransom payments, it's widely acknowledged that money is still exchanged. The situation has drawn international attention, with U.S. President Donald Trump previously threatening military intervention. Nigerian officials emphasize that victims are from all faiths and that the violence isn't solely targeting Christians. The release of the children represents a significant step, but the underlying security crisis in Nigeria remains a serious concern, highlighting the need for continued efforts to combat kidnapping and ensure the safety of schools and communities. The situation underscores the ongoing challenges faced by the Nigerian government in addressing the complex security landscape. Afrikaner farmers seek refugee status amidst rising violence and perceived persecution. A growing number of white South African farmers, primarily Afrikaners, are applying for refugee status in the United States, driven by escalating farm attacks, a pervasive sense of fear, and claims of systematic persecution. The situation is fueled by historical injustices stemming from the apartheid era, where land ownership and opportunities were systematically denied to the black majority. Despite government efforts to address these inequalities through affirmative action policies and land reform initiatives, significant disparities persist, with white farmers retaining control over a disproportionate amount of privately owned land, 72% according to a 2017 government audit. The violence has intensified, with 18 farm murders reported across South Africa between October 2024 and March 2025, 16 of which involved black victims and 2 white victims. This has spurred a narrative of targeted persecution, amplified by claims from figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk, despite evidence indicating that crime is indiscriminate and affects individuals across racial lines. Many farmers, such as Marthinus, feel their safety is threatened and seek asylum in the U.S. The application process is lengthy, and while the U.S. has reduced its annual refugee intake, it has prioritized Afrikaner South Africans. The situation is further complicated by the historical context of forced removals and segregation during apartheid, which continues to impact socio-economic disparities. Nathabasing Nethathakana, a shop owner in a township near Vicksburg, tragically lost her husband, Thambani Ngango, to a robbery and murder, highlighting the vulnerability of individuals and families in affected communities. Despite the claims of a systematic genocide, statistics demonstrate that farm attacks occur across racial lines, and the narrative is being contested by many. The government vehemently denies accusations of persecution, emphasizing the broader issue of violent crime within South Africa. The ongoing struggle for land reform and the persistent inequalities resulting from apartheid remain central to the anxieties of these farmers, as they navigate a complex and perilous environment. The situation underscores the deep-seated trauma and ongoing challenges faced by many South Africans.